Chapter 399, Grand Divination Master Myongryul 4. Tap 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 tap. Ha. Hearing the changed breathing from his back, the eldest young master Na Yulriang spoke. Have you come to your senses? To his question, Mo Yak, who was being carried on his back, said. To think you'd do this instead of using the excellent lightness skill clear and manifest water crossing steps. Of course I'd wake up if you run like this. If I used clear and manifest water crossing steps for high-speed movement, you'd have trouble breathing. That. Should I thank you? If you're awake, focus on circulating your chi again. Though I've stopped the bleeding, your energy is still very scattered. At Na Yulriang's words, Mo Yak nodded and then said. Wait, you stopped the bleeding? Does that mean you didn't do what you were supposed to? The Elder Council said they'd take care of Jang Nungake's side, and the main compound said they've made preparations. What about young lady Wai So-yun? Stone Gate Valley Lord Yun Bek said he'd go personally to bring her, so unless there's a major variable he should bring her. He had sent Yun Bek, one of the 4 valley lords. But then, young master, cough cough. Lower your voice. Cough cough. Instead of wasting time treating my internal injuries, you should have personally gone after young lady Wai So-yun or targeted the Shadow Clan. Even if not the former, I made a promise before losing consciousness to secure the latter. You promised. Didn't you say the society leader's secret would be in the Shadow Clan's estate? You knew that. As for the Shadow Clan, Thunderbolt Fist King Won Byung-hak went personally with his disciples and some close aides. Ah. At these words, Mo Yak's eyes gleamed. Even if it's an empty house, if there's something important, they would have left some people to guard it. That's why I sent the Thunderbolt Fist King. At his answer, Mo Yak showed a slightly relieved look. Na Yulriang's judgment was correct. The Elder Council had told them to secure the youngest disciple Wai So-yun's safety and bring her to the main compound somehow, but that was what they wanted. What was important wasn't the youngest disciple Wai So-yun, but the society leader's secret. The secret that Mok Jayongun had brought to the Shadow Clan after completing his confidential mission would be the real important card. Nevertheless, the Elder Council side hadn't mentioned this to them. That meant they were trying to secretly take the society leader's secret for themselves. Still, if you had gone with the Thunderbolt Fist King instead of treating me, you could have obtained it more easily. It doesn't matter. And if Mok Jayongun survives at the estate, the main compound is more urgent than the Shadow Clan. Eldest young master. Be quiet. And, you're more important to me. At these words, Mo Yak was bewildered and then blushed. How can someone usually so cold and emotionless say such things so well? Mo Yak unconsciously leaned on Na Yulriang's back. Throb. It seemed her upper clothes had been removed for treatment, and even the bandages compressing her chest had been loosened. She was actually a woman. Mo Yak's parents, from a small sect, had hoped she would marry into a good sect to help the family rather than make a name for herself. However, Mo Yak wanted to create her own destiny rather than live such a life. It was eldest young master Na Yulriang who didn't mock this wish of hers and accepted it readily without any fuss. That's why she had decided to devote everything to assist him. Mo Yak, who had leaned on his back and then lifted her head, spoke in a small voice. I'm just a card on the path you want to take, so please don't worry about someone like me and take care of yourself. Shut up. Ha. You stubborn fool. But she didn't dislike it. Just as Mo Yak was about to lean on his back again with a softened expression, boom, boom. Red firecrackers that could be considered signal flares could be seen exploding in the direction of the not-too-distant main compound. Mo Yak's expression hardened at the sight. The meaning of those red firecrackers illuminating the sky of the inner city was only one. Eldest young master? I saw it too. Young master Na Yulriang's expression was ominous as he looked at the firecrackers. At the same time, the Shadow Clan's estate. There were intruders who had entered this place where more than 80% of the forces were absent. They were Thunderbolt Fist King Won Byung-hak, his capable outer commander, and guard warriors among his close aides. Beside Won Byung-hak was Mu Jang-yak, whom he had taken as a disciple a few months ago at Corpse Blood Valley. Originally planning to go take Yun Muong from Esoteric Realm Gate as a disciple, he had instead taken Mu Jang-yak, who had reached the pinnacle stage of the Transcendent Realm with outstanding talent. As he had hoped, Mu Jengyak's talent was indeed second to none. Moreover, the origin of the martial arts he possessed as his main skill was quite excellent. His right fist left palm technique originated from the twin-hand tiger fist of the Jianjin sect, a technique that could exert two martial arts simultaneously, and was an extraordinary secret skill that could only be learned with a unique mental technique and talent that could split one's mind in two. Perhaps because he had learned this technique, Mu Zhengyak had reached the early stage of the transcendent realm in just a few months. At this rate, it seemed he could expect to fully grasp his secret skills and even surpass the wall before long. All this child needs is diverse experience. The more practical experience, the easier it was to gain insights. That's why he was keeping him close and letting him experience real battles despite cherishing him. But then, Master, I've been hearing sounds from over there for a while. Indeed. One Byung-hak too had been hearing what sounded like screams. It seemed to be coming from their target location, but what on earth was happening? They had entered after confirming that manpower had been withdrawn from the Shadow Clan. But there was no way they had returned already, and there shouldn't be anyone else who could enter besides them. So what was going on? Let's go. Yes. So they hurriedly headed towards where their target was presumed to be. But then, roar. What on earth is that? One Byung-hak's outer commander Wu Nong couldn't hide his bewilderment. And for good reason, as in the rear garden was a bizarre and giant being with a horn on its head resembling a dragon, its entire body covered in red fur, and its body looking like a mix between a dog and an ox. It was so large that they had to look up at it. This giant being was none other than Mok Jiongun's familiar, the diabolic beast Aliu. Growling. Ha ha ha. Around this diabolic beast Aliu were several masked martial artists, but their condition and surroundings were terrible. This was because purple smoke was flowing around, and the area was filled with people whose entire bodies had melted into horrific shapes. That purple smoke seemed to be some kind of acid. What on earth is this? It was clear that this being wasn't a beast but a monster. But why was such a monster in the Shadow Clan, and why was it fighting with these unidentified masked individuals? Could there be others besides themselves after what eldest young master Na Yelriang had ordered? As he was puzzling over this old one will take care of these. Kirik. Do as you please, human. Mu Zhengyak's eyes widened. Did that monster just open its mouth and speak? As he was finding this too bizarre, someone appeared like a shadow in front of them. Swish. Tap. It was a young man with a youthful appearance. But this young man was standing slightly hunched as if he were an old man, holding a staff with a snake head in one hand. The young man smiled and said to them, "It seems you two have come to take that old woman away." At these words, Thunderbolt Fist King One Byung-hak's expression became strange. Not knowing why he was acting like this, One Byung-hak's outer commander Wu Nong aimed his fist at him and said, "Speak. What is that monster and who are you?" Thwack. Ugh. Before those words could finish, outer commander Wu Nong was struck on the head by the staff and fell face first to the ground with a death cry. The young one is rude. One Byung-hak's close aides were stunned and at a loss at what had happened in an instant. Mu Zhengyak, who had become One Byung-hak's disciple, was equally surprised. This person is strong. Too strong. Though he had only swung his staff once, Mu Zhengyak, who had reached the early stage of the transcendent realm, could instinctively tell that the young man before him was an unfathomably strong being. Glancing at his master One Byung-hak, it seemed he felt the same way. Clench. Thunderbolt Fist King One Byung-hak clenched his fist, drawing up his energy and opened his mouth. "Who are you? I've never heard nor seen a master like you in the Shadow Clan." Ho ho. As expected of one of the 5 kings of Heaven and Earth Society. None of those fellows focused on anything but appearances, so no one checked this old one. Old one? Did he just refer to himself as an old one? Come to think of it, his manner of speech and voice seemed quite experienced. Given that this face strangely doesn't match his voice, could it be a human skin mask? Just then, the snake head staff suddenly extended towards his face. Ha! Clang! At that moment, Thunderbolt Fist King One Byung-hak swung his fist upward with all his might. But as he struck the staff upward, the aftermath of the impact sent him flying back more than 10 steps. Screech! His close aides couldn't hide their shock as their lord, who was at the pinnacle stage of the transcendent realm, close to the wall, was pushed back a whole 10 steps, not just 1 or 2. Just who on earth is this person? They hadn't realized yet, but his identity was none other than Gyeong Sao, the 8 poison snake staff, one of Mok Jae-un's subordinates. Though he hadn't received the title of one of the 8 stars because his main area of activity was in the western regions, it was no exaggeration to say his martial prowess was on par with 1,000 poison hand Dang In-hee. Plunge. Thunderbolt Fist King Won Byung-hak gritted his teeth. He had thought it wouldn't be a difficult mission since a significant portion of the Shadow Clan's forces had been withdrawn, but a real variable had occurred. Both that bizarre monster and this unidentified person with the snake staff were truly monsters. Rashly dealing with them will end in disaster. Should he retreat? Or should he fight even if it's risky? As he was deliberating for a moment, whoosh, boom, boom. With the sound of something exploding, red firecrackers could be seen embroidering the sky in the direction of the main compound. Seeing this, Thunderbolt Fist King Won Byung-hak's pupils trembled. Emergency? Assembly? That can't be. Surely the details. Boom. A stomp directed at the ground. The aftermath of that stomp caused ripples like waves, and the dozens of martial artists rushing towards them clutched their chests, spat blood and collapsed on the spot. Kook. Cook. Thud. 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 At the sound of them falling, Grand Divination Master Myung-ryul muttered in disbelief. Heavenly demon. He had thought that the report he received would have some exaggeration mixed in. But how could something like this be possible? Even if the society leader, one of the 6 heavens, stepped forward, could he so easily take down so many with just one stomp? As he was bewildered, a voice came from behind him. Now things have been cleared up a bit around us. Flinch. He was startled for a moment, but how did he come behind without any presence? Grand Divination Master Myung-ryul unconsciously swallowed dry saliva. Gulp. Despite becoming stronger through human-monster unity with the diabolic beast Yule, once caught in tension and fear, it wasn't easy to calm down. To him in this state, Mok Jae-un asked with a smile. What did you just say? At this question, Grand Divination Master Myung-ryul's breathing began to quicken slightly. If his guess was correct, this guy was surely... Could it be? Could it be what? Perhaps because he was caught from behind, he couldn't bring himself to speak. It felt like he had learned some major secret about this guy, so it was hard to carelessly speak up. Of course, Mok Jae-un didn't mind this at all. Rather, your heart is beating rapidly. Are you afraid? How interesting. If using that title puts more pressure on you people, it might not be bad to use it. What is he saying? Grab. Kook. Thud. Mok Jae-un grabbed the back of Grand Divination Master Myung-ryul's neck, forcibly making him kneel, and then spoke in a low voice next to his ear. That's right, I am the heavenly demon, Kyeonma. Boom. Boom. As soon as those words ended, coincidentally, the sky was covered with red firecrackers. Chapter 400, Grand Divination Master Myung-ryul 5. Boom. Boom. As the sky was covered with firecrackers, the interior of Heaven and Earth Society began to stir and become noisy. This was because everyone knew what these red signal flares meant. It was something no one had expected. Because of this, all forces and crowds within Heaven and Earth Society, each guarding their own positions, began to move. Boom. Boom. Ah. Though he could hear the sound of firecrackers, Grand Divination Master Myung-ryul, unable to see them, only had Mok Jae-un's voice ringing in his head. That's right, I am the heavenly demon. Those brief words revealing his own identity. Though spoken in a low voice, the pressure contained in them was tremendous. His heart was beating so violently that it wouldn't calm down. To collapse Shaolin's 108 Arhat formation in one step and single-handedly force the closure of Sichuan Tang clan. For an urgent report, its reliability seems a bit low. It's hard to believe, but it seems to be true. However, to accept it at face value. If even the Righteous Alliance is moving, it means they too see the gravity of this situation as significant. Does that mean he is also paying attention to this? He's showing great interest. To the extent of showing interest. Despite having achieved numerous merits, making a spiritual beast his familiar, and becoming strong enough to compete with profound realm martial artists through human-monster unity techniques, he had never shown much interest, let alone in his own realm. Yet for him to show interest to this extent. The seventh heaven. What did you say they call him? Rather than being called, it seems he referred to himself as the heavenly demon. The demon of heaven. Grip. Kook. Grand Divination Master Myongryul suffered as the force around his neck tightened. While numerous thoughts flashed through his mind, the most prominent one was why no one had known this person was the heavenly demon. Or is it stranger that anyone would have noticed his identity in the first place? Come to think of it, he truly is a bizarre fellow. When he was first brought as a hostage to the righteous Yun Mok Sword Manor, he hadn't received any attention at all. The most he became known was after Corpse Blood Valley, but even then he was only at the level of a late-stage chi refinement. Who would have thought such a person would be the seventh heaven, the heavenly demon, currently the most renowned in the martial world? Squeeze. Kuu. You certainly have good endurance. Yuu. Then shall I tell you? Eldest young master Na Yelriang said he absolutely needed something. What was it? Hit. I won't say. You'll talk when you wish for death. Futile. Kill me. Well, I didn't expect you to open your mouth easily. Pop. Mok Jiongun grabbed his left shoulder. Wait, what are you doing now? If I had time I'd start with a single fingernail, but since I don't, we'll go in order of arms then legs. No sooner had those words ended than Mok Jiongun tried to pull off his left arm. It was at that moment. The part of the diabolic beastul's body that was in armor form on his shoulder shot out like a tentacle and grabbed Mok Jiongun's hand. Swish. Simultaneously with that grab. Pop 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 pop. The spines densely covering its entire body sprang out as if they had been waiting for this moment. The spines were so small that it was hard to count their number. It was the diabolic beastul's trump card, having become one with its master through human-monster unity and waiting for an opportunity to protect him. But then, sizzle. The moment those numerous spines sprang out, they melted away as if oxidizing. The diabolic beastul couldn't hide its bewilderment. Damn it! An aura of death surrounded Mok Jiongun's body. As he was approaching Grand Divination Master Myongryul, who had achieved human-monster unity with a monster, he had kept this aura around him as a precaution, which is why it didn't work. That's unfortunate. You must have been waiting for that chance. Crack. As soon as he finished speaking, Mok Jiongun ripped off Grand Divination Master Myongryul's left arm from the shoulder. Arg. Kak 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 kak. As a result, screams of pain erupted simultaneously from Myongryul and the diabolic beastul. Even for Myongryul, who had strong endurance against pain, it was hard to bear having his left arm torn off after his right. In fact, being unable to see, his other senses had developed more, making him more sensitive to pain than ordinary people. However, he had endured it with his unique tenacity, but as the pain of having his arm torn off continued, he felt like he was about to lose his mind from the agony. Mok Jiongun whispered in his ear. You can be as comfortable as you want if you just give the answer I want. Ku. Why young master is. Squeeze. Cup. Just as he was about to say something, the flesh of the diabolic beastul, which was protecting his body like armor, suddenly began to constrict Grand Divination Master Myongryul's body. Stop. Squeeze. Despite Myongryul's cry, the constricting force of the diabolic beastul did not weaken. Rather, it applied even more severe pressure. As his familiar disobeyed even his own command to act like this, something flashed through Grand Divination Master Myongryul's mind. A prohibition spell? He was a master of sorcery worthy of the title of Divine Diviner. Especially his most outstanding field was prohibition spells. Grand Divination Master Myongryul, who had established a unique realm in prohibiting things, had even managed to break his prohibition spell. Although he had sworn loyalty, he didn't want to stake his life as collateral. But, to think he would have placed a prohibition spell even on his own familiar. He thought he wouldn't have noticed since he had kept his mouth shut, but it was right on top of his head. Crack. Cup. As he was suffering with his ribs cracking from the pressure. You've been abandoned. Kuu. Shall I save you? Save me? At Mok Jiongun's sudden proposal, Grand Divination Master Myongryul fell into deep thought for a moment. The fact that he had taken such measures meant that he could detect any betrayal from him at any time. Perhaps he even knew that he had dabbled in the soul transfer technique, a notorious evil person's prohibition spell from long ago. That's why he hadn't feared even death. However, if he knew about his own measures, everything might end regardless of any prepared techniques. Crack. Kuh. More bones were crushed under the pressure of the diabolic bestiole. After numerous considerations in a split second, Grand Divination Master Myongryul finally shouted hurriedly. Save me. At his cry, the corners of Mok Jayongun's mouth turned up. In front of the main compound where the society leader of Heaven and Earth Society's inner city resides. Numerous people were rushing there. The reason they were gathering like this was only one. Boom. Boom. It was because of the red firecrackers that were still embroidering the sky. Young Master Na Yelriang, who had arrived first at the square in front of the main compound as he was already heading there, had a strange expression. And for good reason. Is it really the society leader who called? At Mo Yak's question, eldest young Master Na Yelriang exhaled a long breath without answering. The meaning of those red firecrackers, those signal flares, was the society leader's emergency assembly. When seeing that, regardless of who they were in the association, everyone had to gather in one place by the authority of the society leader. Has his condition improved? According to the Elder Council's information, the society leader had reached a state where recovery was nearly impossible. But how could there be an emergency assembly? Even if he had miraculously regained consciousness, it was impossible to recover so quickly in such a short time. Then could this also be a ploy by the Elder Council? So it was quite excessive. No matter what, how could they exploit the society leader's situation like this when he was practically unconscious? Creak. It was then. The main gate of the main compound opened. As a procession began to come out from there, Mo Yak called out to young Master Na Yelriang in a surprised voice. Why, young master, is that? At the forefront of those coming out in a procession was none other than a severed head impaled on the end of a long spear. Murmur, murmur. The society members under Na Yelriang who had gathered first stirred. What on earth was going on? The main compound's guard corps was coming out in lines as if to display the severed head. Their number was quite large, and while everyone was puzzled, a sect leader of an upper sect opened his mouth with surprised eyes, looking at one of the heads impaled on a spear tip. Elder in? Elder in. At this cry, one of young Master Na Yelriang's eyebrows raised. That head with its tongue sticking out and eyes wide open was Elder in Jigu. He was someone who had retired 12 years ago, and as a former Grand Branch leader with excellent martial arts and many achievements, he had entered the Elder Council. Na Yelriang also knew his face. But for Eldarin to be displayed like this, something has gone wrong. It seemed that the plan the Elder Council had said they would prepare in advance had failed. Otherwise, there was no way such a procession of displayed heads would continue. Na Yelriang's gaze sharpened as he looked up at the top floor of the main compound building where the society leader resided. Young master. It seems both the Elder Council and we have underestimated too much. Na Yelriang's eyes could see someone's silhouette looking down with hands behind their back through the wide-open window. That silhouette was so familiar that he could recognize it at once. Master. It was none other than the society leader of Heaven and Earth Society. Unlike the last time he had seen him, he wasn't even bandaged. Along with young Master Na Yelriang's gaze, the eyes of the gathered Heaven and Earth Society warriors and various sect members naturally turned upwards. A society leader? Is the society leader safe? Look. The society leader is safe. Wah wah. Rumors had spread that the society leader's condition was not good. Because of this, the interior of Heaven and Earth Society had been in turmoil. But when the society leader not only called an emergency assembly but also showed himself in good health after a long time, the square in front of the main compound was filled with cheers. The forces under eldest young Master Na Yelriang couldn't be too pleased with these cheers. It was then that a group entered the center of the square in 5 rows. Seeing them, exclamations of surprise flowed from here and there. It's the Earth Vein. The Earth Vein has returned to the association. Those entering the center of the square like victorious generals were none other than the faction of the Earth Vein, one of the 2 pillars leading Heaven and Earth Society. Chapter 401, Ritual of 3 Veins, 1. The Heaven and Earth Society leader stood with his hands behind his back in front of a wide window. The sickly appearance that had always been accompanied by constant coughing was nowhere to be seen. Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian's expression was indescribably strange as he looked at the society leader's backlit silhouette. Just half an hour ago he had thought there was no hope left, given the unanimous diagnosis of the physicians. The society leader had been ill for many long years. Was such a great master who had dominated an entire generation and gained such renown to die so feebly from illness? He had been feeling depressed at this thought, but then a reversal occurred. Vice leader Mong Xiaoqian, summoned to the society leader's quarters in the main compound, was shocked. The interior of the main compound, stained with blood, was being cleaned up by the Second Guard Corps, and the area around the society leader's quarters was full of fallen corpses. The ones cleaning up those corpses were the First Guard Corps. They were the closest aides, each personally selected by the society leader, known to have never strayed more than 20 jang from him. What on earth had happened while he was away? When he opened the door and entered the quarters, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian was astounded. My lord. The society leader, who had been gasping for breath and seemingly about to pass away at any moment, was standing perfectly fine. And in his hand was a sword, stained with the blood of the elders who had invaded his quarters. He still couldn't forget that sight. To think he would see again the society leader's sharp and imposing gaze that he had long forgotten. Could this really be the same lord who had been a step away from death? To him, filled with surprise and questions, the society leader spoke matter-of-factly in a business-like tone. 2 from the First Guard Corps, 11 from the Second Guard Corps, 8 from the Third Guard Corps. The rest are all from the Elder Council. Surely the numbers he just mentioned weren't. Are you saying they were all enemies, no spies? As you can see. My lord, how did you know whether they were spies or not? They took the bait I had prepared with the net I've been setting up. They're all spies. At his confident voice, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian felt a chill run down his spine for a moment. He spoke as if it hadn't been long, but he had truly spent a long time suffering from illness. But looking at his current state, that long illness was clearly a lie. How else could he have recovered in such a short time if it wasn't a lie? How ruthless. It would be considered remarkable to deceive for just a few months, but he had shown the appearance of suffering from illness for nearly 10 years or more without leaving his quarters. He had even deceived him, his closest aide who had served him since his youth. He was at a loss for words at the realization that he had waited for this moment for a long time with incredible determination and endurance, trusting no one. More than feeling hurt that he had kept this secret even from him, he was simply amazed at why he had gone to such lengths to catch these people. Just who are these people? He had momentarily lost focus due to the surprise of the society leader's good health, but these people were also a mystery. The main compound's guard corps is composed of only the most trustworthy individuals, and even the Elder Council can only be entered after retirement by those who have long devoted themselves to the association. So how could there be spies in such guard corps and Elder Council? Who on earth would do such a thing to the Guard Corps and Elder Council? It was something that even the Righteous Alliance's spies couldn't do. To him, in his bewilderment, the society leader said something hard to understand. It's him. Him. What on earth does that mean? Was there someone the society leader would refer to as him? As he was puzzled, the society leader gave an order. Set off the red flares. By red flares, do you mean to call for an emergency assembly? Now is the perfect time to settle everything, when they have bared their fangs towards this seat and the association. Call them all in. Following his order, he had set off the red flares. Nearly 70% of the personnel in the inner city had gathered, and the rest were still coming. What was the society leader's true intention? There was no reason to call everyone together like this after rooting out the hidden spies. It didn't make sense to go this far. Rather, with so many people gathered, it would be difficult to do anything. What exactly did he mean by perfect timing? Unless there was something special to announce. Such an assembly in this unsettled situation after large-scale spies were discovered in the Elder Council. Wait, announce? Is he going to make an announcement? What on earth is the society leader trying to announce? Is it to let everyone know he's in good health? Given the situation, it was difficult to guess the society leader's true intentions. But then, it's the Earth Vein. The Earth Vein has returned to the association. At the cheers heard from outside, Vice Leader Mong Xiaoqian's eyes widened. What is this? The Earth Vein has returned to Heaven and Earth Society? Why have they, who should be guarding the North, come to the association? Unlike other sects, in the case of the Earth Vein, it was virtually impossible for them to return to the association without a special reason. For them to re-enter the association, they needed only the society leader's permission. Which means, did the society leader call them? Rumble. A group wearing red fox fur cloaks entered the center of Heaven and Earth Society's square as if in a victory procession. They were the Earth Vane, one of the two pillars forming the foundation of Heaven and Earth Society. The Earth Vane? Why the Earth Vane? Mo Yak, young Master Na Yolriang's right hand, frowned as she looked at them. Even if they were a foundation, how did they, who had been driven out to the north long ago after being pushed from the center of power, return here? Na Yolriang was no less puzzled. Head of the Yang family. The tall, sharp-featured middle-aged man standing proudly with his arms crossed at the front of the group was Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vane. He had seen him once when he attended the association's grand meeting as a child. At that time, Na Yolriang had only been learning martial arts for a few years, so he couldn't gauge Yang Zhong's martial prowess. However, since they had long been pushed back by the Heaven Vane and forced to guard the north, he hadn't thought they would be particularly strong. But Na Yolriang's eyes gleamed. This was because Yang Zhong's martial prowess was difficult to gauge. The fact that he couldn't sense his qi meant he was either equal to or above himself, who had reached the pinnacle stage of the transformation realm. How could someone this strong remain unknown? With such martial prowess, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was on par with the 5 kings who had received the title of 8 stars among the executives. Eldest young Master Na Yolriang's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Although the society leader's authority was great, someone of such extraordinary strength wasn't the type to be unconditionally suppressed. Moreover, hadn't the society leader been known to be suffering from illness for many years? It seemed plausible that they could have aimed for a reversal. Despite this, for the leader of the Earth Vane and the Earth Vane itself, who had been so quiet until now, to appear coincidentally at this point. Didn't you know? The society leader has no intention of passing on his position to any disciple, including the eldest young master. Suddenly, Na Yolriang recalled those words spoken by Yulmayong, the messenger from the Elder Council. As he recalled those words, strangely, the scattered pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The Elder Council, which began to move, saying the society leader's condition had worsened. The society leader revealing himself in good health, not dying, while simultaneously purging the Elder Council. And the appearance of the Earth Vane along with the emergency assembly. Clench. Blood flowed from Na Yolriang's clenched fist, such was the force he applied. It wasn't just underestimation. All along, he and everyone else had been dancing in the palm of the master's hand. Rather than his mind becoming complicated, it felt as if it was emptying. This feeling was a first for him. Ha! Ha! What a truly strange day. He had thought himself emotionless, but he seemed to be feeling multiple emotions simultaneously. It was at that moment, as he was sinking emotionally. Hear me. A voice that resonated like an echo. The voice imbued with spiritual energy made everyone's ears ring. Exclamations flowed from here and there at the society leader's profound spiritual energy. This alone announced that not just his appearance but everything about him was in good health. During my illness, I learned that malicious individuals were hiding within our association. At these words from the society leader, the square stirred. Then, are those being displayed on spear tips the malicious individuals the society leader spoke of? The society leader continued his words. Look carefully at those being displayed. Do you recognize who they are? At this question from the society leader, everyone's gaze turned to the displayed heads. While there were unfamiliar faces, they were individuals belonging to the Elder Council, and among those who had received the position of elder were some with thick reputations. Therefore, for the people of the association gathered there, the sight of those displayed was quite shocking. I endured for a long time to root out these individuals. And finally, when rumors spread that my condition had reached its worst, they revealed their hidden fangs. Clench. Drip. Blood from Na Yolriang's fist dripped onto the ground. Where had it gone wrong? Although the society leader didn't mention it directly, looking at those being displayed, anyone could guess that the Elder Council was at the center of this turmoil. At the point where they had failed and been purged, Na Yolriang was in a situation akin to being surrounded on all sides. Although he hadn't fully trusted the Elder Council, the fact remained that he had continued to contact them and received help. Using this as a pretext, he too could be purged. This was why a considerable number of the forces following him now had tense expressions. At this point, Mo Yak wrapped Na Yelriang's bleeding fist with cloth and spoke in a small voice. Young master, be confident. The purge of the Elder Council might provide justification to strike at us, but there are too many who follow you for that. It was nearly half of the forces. They supported young Master Na Yelriang as the next successor and were actually working together. At this point, if they tried to deal with Na Yelriang and all of these people by linking them with the Elder Council, the situation would grow uncontrollably into internal strife. That's why he prepared it. Pardon. The Earth Vein, I mean. At these words from Na Yelriang, Mo Yak frowned and denied. Surely not. No matter what, how could he, not from among the disciples but because they're the only ones qualified to be society leader outside of the Heaven Vein's bloodline or disciples. What do you mean? Then the society leader calling the Earth Vein was... Mo Yak's eyes widened. If the society leader were to pass the right of succession to the leader of the Earth Vein or their clan, eldest young master Na Yelriang and his fellow disciples would be put in a disadvantageous position. This means he had predicted and prepared for this situation from the beginning. Mo Yak couldn't help but click her tongue. Just how many steps ahead had he planned this? This is the worst. If the society leader, not deteriorated from illness but in such good health, directly announces passing on the right of succession, he can completely change this situation given time. Those who support are just that, supporters, but if the society leader is in good health, the situation is different. Gradually, support will shift towards the successor chosen by the society leader. If that happens, there was only one way to overturn this. At that moment, the society leader continued speaking. The reason I gathered everyone today is not just to announce the rooting out of malicious groups. One is to announce that I am still in good health and everyone's attention focused. The other is to announce my successor, a position I have long left vacant. At these words, murmurs began to spread here and there. They had predicted the exclusion of young Master Na Yelriang's right of succession due to his contact with the purged Elder Council. But with the sudden announcement of naming a successor, the atmosphere couldn't help but stir. At their reaction, the corners of Yang Zhang's mouth, the head of the Earth Vein, twitched. He had been waiting for this moment through an agreement with the current lord. Since the founding of our association, the Heaven Vein has always held power, but that's not fair. Then you mean to give the Earth Vein a chance as well? Yes. An unexpected proposal. He couldn't refuse such a tempting offer. There was something the current lord had demanded along with the proposal. But I can't just give you the chance. What do you want? It's simple but difficult. What do you mean by simple but difficult? It's to build the strongest single force that no other group could match, away from the association's influence and eyes. And martial prowess befitting the position of lord. Yang Zhang, head of the Earth Vein, had prepared everything he demanded, grinding his teeth in determination in the north. Now he prided himself that the power of the Earth Vein was at its peak in history. Now that he had finished those preparations and returned gloriously to the association, it was time for the society leader to keep his promise. As if responding to these expectations, the society leader continued speaking. I and the successive heads of the Heaven Vein have fulfilled our responsibilities as society leader of Heaven and Earth Society for a long time since the convergence ceremony, but that doesn't fit with the ritual of the three veins, which forms the foundation of our association. The ritual of the three veins. Although now only the Heaven Vein and Earth Vein remain, it means that all three foundational veins should have the opportunity to become society leader. So now I intend to give that opportunity to veins other than my own. No sooner had these words from the society leader ended than Yang Zhang, head of the Earth Vein, spoke loudly as if he had been waiting, infusing his voice with spiritual energy. We are grateful that the society leader respects the ritual of the three veins, which can be said to be the foundation of our association, and gives our Earth Vein this opportunity. Murmur, murmur. Then does this mean he's giving the right of succession to the Earth Vein, not to the young masters? It seems so, doesn't it? Was this the reason the Earth Vein returned to the association? What's going on? The old sects knew this well. However, all sects that had mentioned the ritual of the three veins without following the Heaven Vein had been purged or pushed to the outer city or branches, despite their contributions to founding the association. The current society leader had practically declared that he would revive this ritual of the three veins, which had been all but abolished. So it was like this after all. Eldest young Master Na Yolriang's eyes were tinged with disappointment. Perhaps they had never been in Master's consideration from the beginning. But then why had he taken them as disciples? Was it just to continue the martial arts of the Heaven Vein? Whatever the reason, thanks to this, it seems he's learned the emotion of disappointment for the first time. Clench. Yes. If that's Master's true intention, it seems I no longer need to have any lingering attachment. Sitting still and being spoon-fed wasn't his style anyway. And Master had made one mistake. Although he needed justification if he intended to give the Earth Vein a chance through the ritual of the three veins, he too had room to exploit this. He too had the qualification to compete with the Earth Vein's successor as one who inherited the martial arts of the Heaven Vein. This was the only loophole in his way out. At this, Na Yolriang opened his mouth to declare that he too would participate in the ritual of the three veins as part of the Heaven Vein. Heave. But it was right then. Master. Na Yolriang frowned at the familiar voice. Jiang Nung AK? It was the voice of Jiang Nung AK, the second disciple. His appearance caused a stir here and there. At the point where the society leader had announced he would conduct the ritual of the three veins and Yang Zhong, the leader of the Earth Vein, had accepted this. Stepping forward here was tantamount to declaring intention to participate in the ritual. Seeing this, young Master Na Yolriang couldn't help but sneer. How dare someone like you step forward? He couldn't distinguish between when to step in and when not to. Of course, it's not incomprehensible. He must have stepped forward thinking his position was shaken due to the Elder Council purge. But it's too much for someone of his caliber. Even Master would make him step down due to his inadequacy if he says he's stepping forward for the ritual of the three veins. But then Jiang Nung AK opened his mouth as if to declare his intention to participate. If it's the ritual of the three veins, doesn't the Moon Vein also have a chance? At these words, sneers erupted from the forces following young Master Na Yolriang and even the Earth Vein. Pfft. The Moon Vein? Ha. They had thought he would say he was participating in the ritual of the three veins, but it was absurd that he suddenly mentioned the long-lost Moon Vein. Yang Zhong, head of the Earth Vein, opened his mouth with a similarly sneering face. Young Master Jiang. Of course, as it's the ritual of the three veins, the Moon Vein would have a chance too, but their vein was cut off long ago. Yet to mention such a Moon Vein in this place. They're here. At that moment, Jiang Nung AK interrupted his words. At this, one of Yang Zhong's eyebrows shot up. No matter that he was the society leader's disciple, to not only interrupt the words of himself, the head of the Earth Vein, one of the three veins, but also to utter such absurd words in a place like this? Sigh. Young Master, it's not right to carelessly say words you can't take responsibility for. The successor of the Moon Vein has come here. What? The successor of the Moon Vein? What on earth is he saying? It was a puzzling moment. From the crowd that wasn't young Master Na Yolriang's or the Earth Vein's forces, a path opened in two directions and someone revealed themselves. Mok Jiangun? Chapter 402, Ritual of Three Veins 2. Jiang Nung AK, the second disciple of the society leader, shouted loudly. The successor of the Moon Vein has arrived. No sooner had that cry ended. From the crowd that wasn't part of the Earth Vein's faction or young Master Na Yolriang's group, a path opened up in two directions, revealing someone's appearance. Everyone's gaze turned there at once. Who's that? Isn't he the disciple the Shadow Clan master took in? I'm pretty sure that guy was originally a hostage from the Orthodox sect. There was a stir here and there at Mok Jiangun's sudden appearance. It was a moment no one had expected. H. Hao. Mo Yak, who was beside young Master Na Yolriang, couldn't hide her bewilderment. What's going on here? Didn't Yolmayong, the messenger from the Elder Council, boast that he would bring all the forces he could muster to deal with Mok Jiangun? But how did that guy get here? Moreover, judging by his attire and appearance, there's not even a trace of injury. Could it be? No way. Even if he had crossed the wall of walls, how could he face such forces without a single scratch? Mo Yak looked up at Na Yolriang beside her and said, Young Moss. Huh. She was suddenly at a loss for words. Although she had seen Na Yolriang in an unpleasant state quite a few times before, this was the first time she had seen his face so hardened. Na Yolriang's gaze towards Mok Jiangun was filled with complex emotions. As she had guessed, Na Yolriang was inwardly displeased that Mok Jiangun had appeared here safely. But there was something that irritated him even more than that. Moon Vein. What's this talk about the Moon Vein? Wasn't the Moon Vein he knew an extinct clan from 100 years ago, with even their remaining secret techniques cursed, causing countless deaths to anyone who touched them, making it an irretrievable clan? So why did that Jang Nung-ak just introduce Mok Jiongun as the successor of the Moon Vein? What's your intention? Despite his quick judgment and deep insight, he couldn't understand this situation at all. That Mok Jiongun guy, though strong, wasn't supposed to be the main character here. His role was supposed to be helping either the second disciple Jang Nung-ak or the youngest Wai So-yun to become a succession candidate by surpassing himself. But now that Jang Nung-ak guy was doing the opposite. Could he really mean to say that Mok Jiongun guy is the successor of the Moon Vein? The Moon Vein. Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein, frowned. This was something that hadn't been discussed at all with the society leader beforehand. No, wasn't the Moon Vein already a lost vein from long ago and thus out of the question? He's beautiful. Despite being a man, he had a truly beautiful face. His face was so beautiful that he could pass for a woman if well dressed. But what's this talk about this young junior brother being the successor of the Moon Vein? He knew that among the society leader's disciples, Jang Nung-ak was skilled in strategies. But he couldn't understand the intention at all. It would be one thing if he stepped forward to participate in the ritual of the three veins as a successor to the Heaven Vein's martial arts. But why is he inserting a third person as the successor of the lost Moon Vein? Society leader. Eventually Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein, looked up at the society leader with a gaze that showed he couldn't understand. Is this situation also part of your plan? Or is it an unexpected development that even you didn't anticipate? At that moment Yang Zhong's eyes narrowed. This was because while there was a stir here and there at the mention of the Moon Vein's successor, the society leader showed no particular change in expression. Seeing his reaction, it was as if he had somewhat predicted this situation. Did you know about this? Of course, that wasn't exactly the case. Even the society leader's eyes glinted at the sight of Mok Jiongun stepping forward as the successor of the Moon Vein. However, unlike others, he wasn't greatly surprised because he had known from the beginning that Mok Jiongun, the hostage from the Orthodox sect, had inherited the Moon Vein's martial arts, and it was he who had prevented this information from being disclosed. How coincidental. But now he revealed himself. And of all times, just as the ritual of the three veins was about to take place. At this, the society leader clicked his tongue. Perhaps it was a predetermined course of events. Society leader. At that moment, Vice Society leader Mong So-cheon approached and, pointing at Mok Jiongun who had appeared among the crowd with a troubled look, said, "What should we do? I don't know how he found out about this, but it seems young Master Jang Nung-ak acted on his own. For now, should we stop him from? Leave him be. Pardon. The will imbued with the spirit is unlikely to miss this good opportunity." The will imbued with the spirit? What does this mean now? Is he saying this because that child Mok Jiongun has mastered the cursed secret techniques of the Moon Vein that no one has been able to learn until now? As he was puzzled by the society leader's incomprehensible words. At that moment, young Master Na Yulriang's voice resonated through the plaza in front of the main platform. I, Na Yulriang, who has inherited the martial arts of the Heaven Vein, wish to participate in the ritual of the three veins. The crowd couldn't help but admire his resounding voice. They say young Master Na Yulriang's martial prowess is comparable even to the 8 stars among the 5 kings, and indeed it was well deserved. Na Yulriang, who had indirectly revealed his level by infusing his voice with internal energy, made a fist and palm salute to Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein. This was clearly showing his will to perform the ritual of the three veins. As expected of the young master. Yes, that's how it should be. Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein, returned the fist and palm salute. From when he had discussed with the society leader beforehand, he had guessed that young Master Na Yulriang wouldn't easily give up his right of succession. So this was rather good. It was much more beneficial for him, even in terms of justification, to have the potential successor participate in the ritual of the three veins of his own accord, rather than the society leader simply handing over the right of succession. However, on the other hand, while I acknowledge the participation of young Master Na Yulriang of the Heaven Vein, could that young junior brother over there convince me on what grounds he claims to be the successor of the Moon Vein? At this question, Mok Jaeung quietly moved his hand to the scabbard of the demonic sword Evil Commandment sword at his waist. As he grasped the scabbard, Mok Jaeung said through voice transmission. Finally. The time has come. Yes. Disciple. The voice of Chong Ryong trembled in response. She had been waiting only for this moment. 100 years ago she lost everything she had to by Yang Han, the head of the Heaven Vein, and became a vengeful spirit. As the first and last leader of the Heaven-Earth-Moon Society, she intended to reclaim her lost honor and everything else. And now was the beginning of that. Shing. Mok Jaeung drew the demonic sword Evil Commandment sword. Woo. As soon as he drew the sword, Evil Commandment sword's unique demonic cry erupted, making the spectators' spines tingle for no reason. Is that the demonic sword Evil Commandment sword? The energy flowing from the sword is truly sinister. Even so, it's a famous sword. The sword energy emanating from it is extraordinary. The sword masters renowned in the Heaven and Earth Society showed interest as they looked at the demonic sword Evil Commandment sword. As sword masters, there was no one who wouldn't be captivated by a sword made by the greatest craftsman, O Yezi, even if it was a demonic sword. Swish. Mok Jaeung immediately took a sword stance. Then he slowly traced an orbit with his sword. Everyone who saw that orbit was reminded of a full moon hanging in the night sky. The orbit was so clean that some of those watching couldn't help but gape. Especially the sword masters with high martial prowess. They couldn't help but exclaim in admiration the moment they saw this orbit that Mok Jaeung was slowly tracing. It was such a simple orbit, but it was perfect to the point where no gaps or spaces could be seen. As expected. Even Chong Ryong couldn't help but admire as she watched this. Even when she first showed Mok Jaeung the sword techniques of the moon vein, he had internalized them at a glance. However, that was just simple movements. Mok Jaeung's sword techniques of the moon vein, as he properly displayed them, not just basic forms but actual techniques, had already far surpassed her own. Rather, she was grateful that they had become even more perfect in Mok Jaeung's hands. Whoosh! Exclamations flowed from here and there at Mok Jaeung's subsequent sword movements. This can't be. How can sword movements be this beautiful? These sword movements. Those who were watching in admiration soon couldn't hide their surprise as well. This was because they could tell that the sword techniques Mok Jaeung was displaying, while similar to the sword techniques of the Heaven Vein, were clearly different in essence. It's undoubtedly the sword techniques of the Moon Vein. Even Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein, had to admit this inwardly. The three veins, derived from one root, had a structure where their techniques might be similar in basic forms even if their essence was different. But the sword techniques that Mok Jaeung was now displaying were so imaginative that even those seeing them for the first time were reminded of the moon. At this, enough. Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein, shouted for him to stop. Mok Jaeung, who was in the middle of displaying half of his sword movements, stopped and looked at him. Then Yang Zhong made a fist and palm salute and said, "There's no need to deny it, you have undoubtedly inherited the martial arts of the Moon Vein. I, Yang Zhong, acknowledge you as the successor of the Moon Vein." Murmur, murmur. The surroundings stirred at this proclamation. Although he had been accepted as a disciple of the Shadow Clan master, there were still many in the society who regarded Mok Jaeung merely as a hostage from the orthodox sect. They couldn't help but be surprised that he was now acknowledged as the successor of the Moon Vein, one of the three veins, by the Earth Vein. Amidst this, an aide of Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein, whispered, "Even if you acknowledge him as the Moon Vein, why did you stop him? Head. What's the point in defeating an opponent who has shown all their cards before even performing the ritual of the three veins? Head. Even so. Enough. It's only meaningful to defeat an opponent at their best." This was the reason why Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein, had stopped Mok Jaeung in the middle of displaying his sword movements. It wasn't out of disrespect or hasty acknowledgement. He simply wanted equal conditions to the point where words couldn't describe it. Seeing this, Mo Yak let out a sigh. I had hoped the head of the Earth Vein wouldn't acknowledge him. Now there was no other choice. Or rather, the fact that the society leader who had first suggested giving other veins a chance by proposing the ritual of the three veins, remained silent at Mok Jaeung's appearance might mean he had known about this all along. Clench. Mo Yak bit her lip hard and looked at young Master Na Yol Riang. Before Mok Jaeung appeared, The only hope was to participate in the ritual of the three veins and overcome the head of the earth vein. But now the situation had turned for the worst. No matter how much she supported her lord Na Yolryang, having experienced Mok Jiongun's monstrous martial prowess, she couldn't dare predict his victory. However, clench. She could see young Master Na Yolryang's fists tightening. Moreover, his eyes were still full of fighting spirit. Seeing this, Mo Yak felt ashamed for a moment. Her lord hadn't given up, yet she was about to advise him to withdraw, thinking it was a fight without hope. So there was only one thing she should do. It was to create a situation even slightly advantageous for Na Yolryang. Please wait a moment. Mo Yak stepped forward and shouted. At this, everyone's attention turned to her. Some people from Na Yolryang's faction who had thought she was a man were startled to see her with her hair down and her chest exposed. Regardless, she paid no attention to this and shouted. Although the society leader suggested giving other veins a chance through the ritual of the three veins, this is still absurd no matter how you look at it. Absurd. One of Yang Zhong's eyebrows raised. He had acknowledged him as the successor of the moon vein, but who was this woman to interfere like this? At this, Yang Zhong spoke in a cold voice. This is not a matter for a young lady like you to interfere with. I apologize for disturbing your mood. However, even if we are to perform the ritual of the three veins, I believe one should meet at least the minimum qualifications. Minimum qualifications? What are you talking about? Beyond this, the ritual of the three veins is not simply to discuss martial arts. This is the place to decide the leader of our society. How can one lead the society if it's decided simply based on superior martial arts? So what are you trying to say? Even if he has inherited the martial arts of the moon vein, unlike Head Yang Zhong who leads the earth vein or young master Na Yolryang whom I serve from the heaven vein, he was originally a hostage from the orthodox sect. At these words, even Yang Zhong fell silent as if his enthusiasm had cooled. Mo Yak, not missing this opportunity, continued her speech. Of course, one of the three society leaders, the Shadow Clan Master, has accepted him as a disciple. But if someone who was originally a hostage from the orthodox sect, without any proper foundation in our society, participates in the ritual of the three veins just because he inherited the moon vein, and by any chance becomes the successor who would properly follow him? Murmur, murmur. There was a stir here and there at Mo Yak's words. This was because many agreed with her words. Regardless of inheriting the moon vein or his martial prowess, Mok Jiongun was an outsider and had been brought in as a hostage. How could such a person have the foundation to lead the Heaven and Earth Society? Good. As the reaction gradually spread, she inwardly rejoiced. If it were only about martial prowess, Mok Jiongun would be the most advantageous, but leading an organization wasn't a matter that could be solved with that alone. I need to push this firmly. She had to use this opportunity to prevent Mok Jiongun from participating in the ritual of the three veins. It was right at that moment. Hehehe. How interesting to say that this old man's disciple lacks a foundation. At the voice infused with internal energy, everyone's gaze turned somewhere. There stood a middle-aged man who appeared to be in his late 40s, with his hands behind his back. The moment they saw him, everyone couldn't hide their surprise. There was one person whose recent transformation beyond the wall had spread throughout the entire society. It was none other than Baek Saha, the Annihilating Poison King. Chapter 403, Ritual of Three Veins 3. Hehehe. How interesting to say that this old man's disciple lacks a foundation. The surrounding area buzzed with commotion at these words from the Annihilating Poison King Baek Saha. Murmur, murmur. Did the Annihilating Poison King just call him his disciple? He certainly did. No way. What's going on? It was understandable, given that even when Shadow Clan Master, one of the three clan masters who could be considered a high-ranking executive, took Mok Jiongun, a hostage from the righteous faction, as a disciple, it caused considerable controversy. But the Annihilating Poison King was one of the five kings, considered the greatest fighting force in the Heaven and Earth Society. For him to step forward and officially call Mok Jiongun his disciple at what was essentially an official emergency gathering was tantamount to a public announcement. So he's finally revealing it. Mo Yak clicked her tongue inwardly. In fact, she knew that the Annihilating Poison King had some kind of relationship with Mok Jiongun, as the young master Na Yulriang had mentioned something after regaining consciousness from his injury. However, she had assumed that the reason for not making this public was out of consideration for Mok Jiongun's background. She didn't expect him to step forward at such a crucial moment. Go. The annihilating poison King Bek Saha revealed his characteristic aura as he opened his mouth. If the foundation is the problem, our Bek family is willing to provide any support necessary. No one can disregard my disciple. The surrounding murmurs fell silent all at once in the face of his aura. It was only natural that the average members would be overwhelmed, as the influence of the Bek family, a sect specializing in poisons, was counted among the top 5 within the Heaven and Earth Society. However, Mo Yak didn't show much reaction to this. It's fine. This much had already been anticipated. Although the addition of the annihilating Poison King's Bek family's power to the Shadow Clan couldn't be ignored, public opinion against allowing Mok Jiongun, a hostage from the righteous faction, to participate in the ritual of the 3 veins was still stronger with just these 2 factions supporting him. Moreover, since the forces supporting young Master Na Yulriang and the head of the Earth Vein were still overwhelmingly dominant, if they could just push the negative public opinion a little more. But it was at that moment. Oh my. Seems like you've already forgotten. Swish. Jang Nungak, the second disciple of the society leader, stepped forward elegantly, unfurling his fan. All eyes turned to him. Come to think of it, he was the one who had first introduced Mok Jiongun as the successor of the Moon Vein. What trick are you trying to pull? Mo Yak had been curious about his intentions, wondering why he suddenly put Mok Jiongun, who had inherited the martial arts of the Moon Vein, into this situation, especially since Na Yulriang was already aiming for the society leader position despite his lack of ability. Was his goal to disperse the factions as much as possible? No, if that were the case it would only disperse his own faction, so what was he up to? ZZZZT. At that moment young Master Na Yulriang, who had been glaring at Jang Nungye, frowned and brought his hand to his right eye. What's this? Despite not uncovering his eye patch to open his demon eye, he felt a strange discomfort that made his eye twitch. Puzzled by this, Na Yulriang glared at his second senior disciple, Jang Nungye, with sharpened eyes. Could it be? Just then unexpected words spilled from the mouth of the second young master, Jang Nungye. Jang Nungye, though the second disciple of the society leader, have been moved by the character and martial prowess of Mok Jiongun, the successor of the Moon Vein present here, and have decided to serve him. The plaza erupted into commotion once again at this sudden declaration. Everyone had assumed that Jang Nungye, known for his capricious nature and skill in strategy, had some ulterior motive for bringing Mok Jiongun, who had inherited the Moon Vein's martial arts, into the picture. But this was a completely unexpected development, leaving everyone shocked. What? How could the second young master serve a mere hostage from the righteous faction as his lord? By goodness! The impact was tremendous. This wasn't just anyone but one of the society leader's disciples. Jang Nungye had been one of the most likely succession candidates after young Master Na Yulriang. For him to publicly support someone other than his own senior disciple naturally caused confusion. Moreover, the advanced disciples of the Five Mountains Alliance, which Jang Nungye led, gathered around him. They were Ko Yunhu, the grand leader of the First Mountains Hegemon Group, Seo Haiyan, the leader of the Fourth Mountains Rising Mist Group, and Geo Mo Pal of the Fifth Mountains Giant Rock Fist. Although 2 of them, Wai Mengqion of the Second Mountain and Ho Zhang Hyok of the Third Mountain and leader of the Indestructible Group, had lost their lives, their forces remained intact with him. Naturally, this led to the question. Wait, doesn't this mean that the Guardian Clan Master, father of Grand Leader Ko Yunhu, is also supporting this? Ko Yun Byok, one of the 3 clan masters known as the Guardian Clan Master. He was a master of the Fist, known as the Iron-Blooded Man, and was responsible for guarding the outer castle of the Heaven and Earth Society. Clench. Mo Yak bit her lip hard. She never expected the second young master Jang Nungye of all people to come out like this. She hadn't anticipated at all that he, who had never hidden his desire to become the society leader, would give up on this ambition. This was even more surprising given his alliance with Wai Soyun, but what kind of bolt from the blue was this? It was as if the entire force of the second young master Jang Nungye had been added to Mok Jiongun's side. Wait, could it be? Mo Yak hurriedly looked around, searching for Wai So-yun, the youngest disciple of the society leader. Recently she had managed to kill Ho Jong-hyuk, the son of the axe-breaking king, through a scheme, leaving traces of the Bright Sun Sword technique, the secret martial art of the Bright Blade King Sun Yun, to break their alliance. However, since she hadn't yet confirmed whether they had noticed the scheme and were just putting on a show or not, she was looking for Wai So-yun with a sense of dread. If by any chance Wai So-yun's faction also unexpectedly supported Mok Jae-yun, it would be tantamount to nearly half of the forces joining him. However, she's not here. Wai So-yun was nowhere to be seen. Even Sun Yun, the Bright Blade King who supported her, and his disciples were absent. Ji Okarayan, Wai So-yun's confidant, also seemed to be missing. Coincidentally, Ji Okarayan's father, the Sun Rock Valley Master, was away from the association due to a mission. Did they succeed in the Elder Hall? Come to think of it, they had said they would secure Wai So-yun in the Elder Hall. Perhaps that's why Wai So-yun wasn't showing up despite the emergency gathering. In any case, it was fortunate that she didn't appear and unnecessarily show her support. Moreover, swoosh. Mo Yak turned her head to look at one of the female executives standing behind Na Yul-riang. She was Hang Ye-riang, one of the 4 Valley Masters known as the Sound Valley Master. Originally, Hang Ye-riang had publicly supported the second young master Jang Nung-ak. This was due to her friction with the Bright Blade King Sun Yun, who supported Wai So-yun, the youngest disciple. However, when Jang Nung-ak and Wai So-yun formed an alliance, Mo Yak had managed to wedge herself between them and successfully bring the Sound Valley Master Hang Ye-riang under their wing. It was good that we recruited her even though the young master didn't approve. The Sound Valley Master was such an unpredictable character that everyone in the association was wary of her. However, her power was not something that could be easily ignored. We still have the upper hand. He had to admit it. That guy's caliber was not one to be under someone else, leaving aside orthodox and unrighteous factions. But it's not like this side had been sitting idle either. There was a hidden card that even the Elder Hall hadn't noticed until the end. She had intended not to reveal this in case of emergencies, but given how the situation had turned out, to clearly dominate in terms of power. Thud. At that moment someone approached, setting down a large axe on the ground. It was Ho Taegang, one of the 5 kings and one of only 2 people in the Heaven and Earth Society to receive the title of 8 stars. Everyone was momentarily speechless at his appearance, covered entirely in blood. Nevertheless, he approached Mok Jae-yun without any hesitation, knelt on one knee, placed a hand on his chest and paid his respects. Murmur murmur. The society members were once again astounded by this sight. Although the second young master Jang Nung-ak had said he would support Mok Jae-yun, seeing this beast-like man who had received the title of 8 stars and was known for his strong pride, kneeling down was truly shocking. But it didn't end there. Rumble rumble rumble. At that moment, another group began to arrive from the entrance of the plaza. The one leading them was none other than the Corpse Blood Valley Master? The figure walking in with a demon mask and red robes fluttering was indeed the Corpse Blood Valley Master, Lee Jeom. Having been stationed furthest outside the outer castle, he had only just arrived. Despite being a founding contributor, he had been pushed away from power, but he still commanded considerable forces, making his sect an unfortunate one that had been pushed out and almost confined outside the outer castle. Thanks to this emergency gathering, he had entered the inner castle after a long time. But as soon as he reached the center of the plaza, thud. Corpse Blood Valley Master Lee Jeom pays respects to his lord, young Master Mok Jae-yun. Everyone was not just surprised but utterly bewildered at the sight of Lee Jeom kneeling before Mok Jae-yun. This was true even for Vice Leader Mong Seo-cheon, who was watching from the top of the main platform. No. What is this? He was already surprised by the number of forces supporting Mok Jae-yun, but he never expected even the Corpse Blood Valley Master to follow him, let alone the Destruction King Ho Taegang, one of the 8 stars. Even the society leader seemed quite surprised by Mok Jae-yun's support base exceeding expectations, his eyes gleaming with interest. The Corpse Blood Valley Master. So that's why. They were forces that had supported the Moon Vein long ago. Because of that, they had been pushed out beyond the outer castle despite being founding contributors. If that child was indeed the will of the Spectre as he had predicted, It wasn't incomprehensible that the Corpse Blood Valley Master Li Jiom would follow him like this. However, the word impressive is no longer sufficient. In just half a year, and considering the time spent on confidential missions, the actual period of his presence wasn't that long, yet he had managed to make so many follow him. It was truly astonishing that his qualities as a leader were to this extent. Was that why? The society leader's gaze became enigmatic. Clench. Mo Yak's lips were bleeding from how hard she was biting them. She had tried to manipulate public opinion to prevent Mok Jiangun from participating in the ritual of the three veins by emphasizing his background as a hostage from the righteous faction. However, it had already reached a point where that was no longer possible. The forces supporting Mok Jiangun had already surpassed half of those within the Heaven and Earth Society. Damn it. Even if she revealed her hidden card, there was no way to overturn the supporting forces and prevent Mok Jiangun's participation. Her eyes welled up with tears of frustration. She had wanted to use her intellect to somehow create a stepping stone for Na Yelriang to become the society leader, but now it seemed that plan was crumbling, leaving her utterly devastated. Pat. Someone placed a hand on her shoulder. This is enough. It was Na Yelriang. Young master. Mo Yak, you have more than fulfilled your role as my Zhang Liang. Zhang Liang. He was the strategist of Emperor Gaozu of Han. Despite his high praise, tears streamed down her face as she felt she had ultimately failed to be of help. Removing his hand from her shoulder, young Master Na Yelriang walked into the empty center of the plaza with determined eyes and spoke loudly. Now that the Heaven Vein, Earth Vein and Moon Vein have all come forward, what is there to hesitate about? Let us proceed with the ritual of the three veins. At his words, Yang Zhong, the head of the Earth Vein, also stepped forward. This is what we've been waiting for. Now let's see which of the Earth Vein, Heaven Vein, or Moon Vein is most suitable to be the leader of this association through the ritual of the three veins. Unlike his spirited and boisterous voice filled with fighting spirit, Yang Zhong's expression wasn't as bright as before. This was because the successor of the Moon Vein, revived after 100 years, had more supporting forces than expected. No matter how much he had raised the power of the Earth Vein to its peak, it was inevitable to feel psychologically intimidated when faced with so many followers. However, he soon erased these distracting thoughts from his mind. What mattered in the end was the ritual of the three veins. Regardless of the number of supporting forces, the one who achieved final victory here would become the next master of the association. Step, step, step. At that moment, Mok Jiangun walked towards the center of the plaza where they were standing. Perhaps because it seemed that the ritual of the three veins to determine the next successor of the association was finally beginning, the atmosphere became increasingly charged. As he walked forward, Mok Jiangun spoke. Now that I've announced the revival of the Moon Vein in front of everyone, I've achieved my primary objective. Primary objective? Humph. Young Master Na Yelriang snorted at those words. He was determined to settle things here and now, fighting to the death given how things had turned out. Even if Mok Jiangun possessed overwhelming skills, it was still uncertain since he hadn't opened his demon eye yet. But then, the entertainment ends now. What? Tap. Mok Jiangun, having reached the center, stood arrogantly with his hands behind his back and then opened his mouth, his voice infused with qi as if intending for everyone to hear. I proclaim to all. His voice echoed like thunder. The qi in his voice was so strong that those with weak internal energy covered their ears in pain. But Mok Jiangun's next words shocked everyone in the plaza. The Heaven and Earth Society will disappear by my hand, by heavenly demons today.